Hey, everybody. Today we've got a few stories that expose some cheaters on accident. Let's check them out and see how they go. Our first story. Today I screwed up by exposing a customer's affair to his wife. So this took place maybe half an hour ago. And to be honest, there's still a chance there will be some kickback for this today. I, 25 male, work in a call center, and am doing so for the duration of this pandemic while I wait to find out what's happening about going back to university. It's no career, but it's a pretty nice job with some decent people, and it's easy. All we do really is facilitate switches for people looking for better deals on household stuff. Usually their internet provider or supplier of gas, electricity, etc. We have agents in the field who make sales, then call us for verification with the customer. Simple, right? Not today. See, usually it's company policy not to do callbacks. Nobody wants annoying call centers calls, right? So, unless the customer specifically requests a scheduled callback, we just don't call them. I had a customer 2 days ago looking for a pretty pricey internet switch, going from some basic setup to a full TV, phone, internet package. The works. All the channels, anytime calls to numbers including international, 500 plus megabits per second Wi-Fi, and it came to over £100 a month. I informed the customer, who's an impatient sounding guy, that because of the price increase, he'll need to have a quick credit check run on him, and it'll mean the call takes a little longer. The guy gets all pissed about being busy and saying he can't waste all afternoon on the phone to some call center. So would it be alright if I called him after the weekend to go through it then? Seems straightforward enough. This is pretty common. People are always up for the sale until they realize they'll need to spend more than one whole minute on the phone. But I scheduled the call anyway and asked if there was a specific time he wanted me to call. He says any time is fine and follows with, "If Emily answers, just ask her for me. She'll make sure I get the phone." And gave me a home phone number. Fast forward to today, and I make a grave error. See, the application I had from the customer had his home phone number already filled in, which it turns out was not the same number he'd given me for today's callback. I called the number I thought was correct, and a woman answered. I say without thinking, "Oh, hi, I'm calling for Steve to confirm his broadband switch. We spoke the other day. You must be Emily." Cue uncomfortable pause. She says, "This is Steve's wife, Amanda. What do you mean? I must be Emily?" I apologized and said, "I'm so sorry. When I spoke to him the other day, he said if an Emily answered, just to ask for Steve." And she just goes, "I freaking knew it. I freaking knew it." And slammed the phone down. After checking the application against the post-it note I'd jotted some info down on the other day, I realized Steve must have given me the number for where he was going to be today, and I'd instead called his unsuspecting wife at home. Nobody's called into my workplace yet, but if they do, I don't think they'll be happy. Update 1. Well, crap. Angry Steve just called my workplace and has achieved nothing but making himself look like an even bigger freaking dipshit than he already has. Also, for the record, Steve was always a terrible person and deserves all he gets. The reason for the today I screwed up was because I was worried about my job. So I haven't worked here very long, and I'm still learning things about company policy, and it turns out that when an application is put through by an agent, it must be the applicant's own details, according to what they provided the agent. So I was only technically allowed to call the wife anyway, not Emily's home number as he gave me. If he'd wanted to call to a different number, he would have had to have a new application submitted with revised details. It wasn't enough to just give me a different phone number over the phone. So my job is safe. Phew. However, my manager isn't happy and I'm getting a write-up. But I can live with that. They don't mean much and I've never had one till now. Always on time and have taken overtime voluntarily. Anyway, this guy phones up and before saying anything else, leads the call with one of my colleagues, who by the way is a teenage girl in what I think is her first job, and he says, "Put me on with that little effing C-word who thought it would be funny to call my wife after I explicitly told him not to." Obviously, the poor girl was confused and looked about to ask the room for a manager ASAP. I immediately piped up and said, "Is it Mr. X from insert location?" And she confirmed, so I got her to transfer the call to my desk ASAP. Steve comes on the line and goes, "I bet you think you're well effing funny, you little dick. Put your manager on the phone and see if you're so smart when you lose your job." So, in my most sarcastic, overcompensating, cutesy phone voice ever, I just say, "Of course, sir. Let me transfer you to someone who can help." Then put him on hold for 20 minutes, hoping it would wind him up even more while I found my manager and told him about the whole situation. He explained what I'd said above, that I wasn't technically in the wrong from a legal standpoint. And then my poor team leader had to quickly explain to Steve that he didn't have a legal claim, but that we're sorry for the distress caused. Sucky, I know, but it's a business after all. And now hopefully, Steve's evening culminates in his entire life being ruined. I got a disciplinary write-up for it, but it's over now. Sorry for the wall of text, but thanks for the awards. Update 2. For those wondering about the disciplinary, it was a formality and was the lowest possible level write-up my company can give. It was given as a formality because of the disruption to the office. The girl Steve called was upset and it became a whole thing. He argued that I still made a mistake, but that ultimately I am in no trouble over it. He also cited on the write-up that leaving him on hold for so long, just to wind him up, was spiteful and petty, which, yeah, but Steve deserved it, so it'd be like that. Dang! Alright, next up. Today I screwed up by cheating on my significant other, and karma came back fast. This actually happened about 10 years ago, and we split up because of it. Before we go any further, I want to point out that I am fully aware of how crappy and inexcusable cheating is. I was young and made a mistake that I paid for immediately. This is my story. So, one night, my roommate invited me, 21 years old at the time, to the beach to see a bunch of people that we knew from high school and hadn't seen since graduation. We had spent all night in the bar drinking and taking shots. Eventually, the bar closes, so me, my roommate, and the remaining members of our group decided to grab the coolers from our friend's hotel and headed towards the water to finish the night off with a few more beers and listen to the water. The waves seemed to be appearing from a void. This is about the time things took a turn. We had been debating getting in the water, but this is not very smart at night, especially when you don't know the schedule of the tide. Plus, we were absolutely hammered. I was the first one to start heading that way, removing my clothes down to my underwear, when one of the girls we were with sprints past me. I turn around and everyone is naked. I admit that at this point I had not even considered how my girlfriend would have felt about this, and I got naked too. We had been swimming for about 30 minutes when everyone started splitting up. This was during low tide, so you could go quite a ways from shore and still be waist deep. I had come up to a sandbar with this girl that I had been friends with for years. Neither of us had even realized how far away we had strayed from the group or the shore. This is the moment I cheated. About halfway through the deed, I heard my roommate screaming our names at the top of his lungs. We were the only ones left out there, and the tide was coming in. We made it only a few feet from the sandbar when I noticed what looked like fireflies in the water. I quickly realized that they were jellyfish, and they were everywhere. We both frantically tried to hurry through, but they just kept coming. There were at least 50 to 75 that we could see. Suddenly, I felt a sharp sting across the back of both knees. I grabbed my friend by the wrist and started to pull her as I did my best to run because now crap had gotten serious. I made the one mistake that every beachgoer knows better than to do. I decided we needed to get out immediately, and climbing the rocks would help. I didn't even get a single foot planted because my toe was immediately sliced open to the bone by a clam. Now I've got nothing on, I'm bleeding, and both of us had been stung all over. We started back towards the beach when I was doubled over in pain, shooting through my nether regions. I thought I had been bitten or something, but it turns out a jellyfish had wrapped around my genitals. I had never been in pain like this before. When we finally got to the beach, we were surrounded by all of our friends who heard us screaming and had called the police because they thought we had come across a shark. It's now almost 5 a.m. and the experience had completely sobered me up. The police were surprisingly cool about the whole situation, and one of them offered to walk us back to the hotel. Fast forward to later in the morning when my roommate had driven us home. When we got home, I started evaluating my injuries. I definitely needed stitches, but opted out because I didn't have insurance at the time. My male anatomy looked horrendous, however. I couldn't even believe what this jellyfish had done to it. It had swollen, tender, and was a different shape. I took a handful of ibuprofen and took a shower before passing out for the remainder of the day until the evening when I woke up to my girlfriend crawling in bed with me. My heart sank. She knew I had gone out the night before, and my roommate informed her of my rough night, excluding the fact that I betrayed her. She was there for maybe a total of 10 minutes before I completely broke down and confessed, but did not tell her about the cut or the jellyfish. She never looked at me, never cried, and left without saying anything. I saw her about 4 years ago in a bar. She approached me and asked if we could talk for a while. She told me that she was never mad at me, and that after some time, she was just happy I was honest. After the fact, she noted. To which I replied, "Well, I've got something else to tell you about that night that you're gonna love." She freaking loved every second of hearing the rest of the events from that night. We laughed pretty hard about it. I paid for her tab and left. We haven't spoken since. Next up. Today I screwed up by accidentally getting my dad caught in an affair. This was a long time ago when I was a senior in high school. My parents decided I was old enough to be home while they went away to a couple's resort somewhere in the Caribbean. Being a good kid, I kept my promise to not have any parties. Being a not-so-good kid, I invited my girlfriend of the time to sleep over while my parents were out having fun on some pink sand beach, or so I assumed. My brother was away at college, but I still slept in the bunk bed we had growing up. I didn't think it would be a very good spot for my girlfriend and I, and it was too skinny for two people to sleep on. I was pretty sure she wouldn't want the top bunk all to herself. So I changed the sheets in my parents' bed and planned on doing all the sleeping activities there. There was an initial ick factor, but when you're young and there's an entire bed, an entire house, you get over that sort of thing fairly quickly. Here's the screw up. In anticipation of more consecutive days of sleeping activities than I had ever imagined possible, I had purchased the big box of condoms. It had like 36 rubbers in it. I figured it would last the first weekend, and then we could go get more. I'm not sure why, but at some point I took one out of the box and tried it on. Maybe I wanted to make sure it fit on my enormous junk. Yeah, that's probably it. Anyway, it seemed okay, so I took the condom off and threw it away. Then I hid the box with the other 35 of them in my dad's nightstand. I didn't want my girlfriend to see a giant box of condoms sitting right out in the open. She might get the wrong idea about me. As it turned out, I never got to use any of the condoms. My girlfriend had also prepared for the big event. Without telling me about it, she had seen an OBGYN and got a prescription for birth control pills. And she had timed it so that they'd be effective before my parents left. And so, the condoms remained, unused and entirely forgotten, in my dad's nightstand. This isn't about the actual sleeping activities, so I'll just summarize them as awesome. Fast forward nearly a year, I'm now living in a dorm. One night, I get a call from my brother who tells me that mom and dad are getting a divorce. She apparently caught him cheating on her. I'll never know the full details, but from what we could gather, it went like this. Mom found a giant box of condoms in dad's nightstand, and it was opened and one empty condom wrapper was inside. I didn't remember doing that, but it made sense that I would. She accused him of having an affair, and she said she had evidence, meaning the box of condoms, but not being specific at the time. He believed her without asking, what evidence exactly? And admitted to having had an affair a few years prior. Huge fight, angry words exchanged, lawyers engaged, divorce imminent. It took a second, but then I remembered the 35 baby barriers I had left in my dad's nightstand. Blamed the fog of war or something. I definitely hadn't been thinking about cleaning up after myself. Granted, my dad's inability to keep his zipper shut was not my fault, and it's possible that he might have been caught some other way. Unlikely though, since the affair had been completely over for more than 2 years. And it's not like they had a perfect marriage. Things were pretty messed up long before all of this. I'm pretty sure that the Caribbean vacation had been sort of a last-ditch effort to rekindle their spark. But the initiating event was all mine. That was a pretty awesome story. At least you still got to have your fun. Sorry to hear about your parents though. Bummer.